I watched John Carpenter's The Thing. And yeah, I know it came out in 1982, so you may be asking, Gayfesh, surely you've seen it before, but no, I actually never had seen it before. And it's not like I was averse to seeing it, it's just one of those things that I never got around to. Since this was an off week, I figured I would, and I did, and I have thoughts on it. Most of those thoughts were, holy crap, the special effects in this movie were on point. The practical effects of the alien looked so good, and like, there's some of the rubber cheesiness about it, but I really think that adds to the charm, and it really makes me long for the days when we were doing practical effects. You still haven't seen The Thing? Well, I will try not to get too much into spoilers for it, even though the movie is 41 years old this year. But I get it. I get why it's a classic. The basic premise is a bunch of guys at an Antarctic research station when an alien shapeshifter shows up. You know, if you've played Among Us, it's the plot to Among Us, where you don't know who is sus. Anybody could be sus. And there's just something about the isolation of Antarctica. Now, there were some issues that I noticed with it where, like, one of the characters said that this was the first week of winter, and you do not go to Antarctica in the winter. Antarctic research stations are only staffed 6 months out of the year for a very good reason. In the winter in Antarctica, you have no sun. There's certain parts on the planet when you get close to the poles where 6 months out of the year you have sun and 6 months you don't have sun. So it is way too cold in Antarctica in the winter for anybody to be there. Now, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I think it was starting to get dark at the end of the movie. And yeah, everybody would have left by then. So that's an issue. And I know that, like, every year at Antarctic research stations, they play The Thing for, like, Halloween, you know, which is great for them. And also, since it's the Southern Hemisphere, I think this is probably about the time that they would actually start their research, because it's basically, it's spring right now in the Southern Hemisphere. So yeah, that would be about the time that you would go. Your old roommate has The Thing board game. It plays out a lot like Among Us. Yeah, I imagine it would. I love all of the little characters in this movie. There's this conspiracy nut who is always smoking a joint. There's a lot of people who are smarter and a lot of people who are dumber. There's, you know, it just, the psychology of all of these people who are trapped, knowing that at any point, any one of them could be the Thing. Quinn says, I mean, I think it works thematically, not logically. The sun going away suggests that hope is lost. They'll be frozen over again. Yeah, for sure. There's definitely an aspect there to be had. And, you know, this is a movie that involves an alien being thawed out of the ice that can shapeshift and, like, shoot tentacles at things and stuff. So obviously those things don't exist in the real world, so there's creative license. But I do notice when that creative license, like, clashes with the practical realities of how things would actually play out. So I have to point out stuff like that. I didn't realize until I was watching the opening credits that Ennio Morricone was the composer for this movie. And he's probably one of the legends of Hollywood. He did a bunch of the spaghetti western soundtracks. And this soundtrack is a very John Carpenter-esque soundtrack. It wasn't what I would have expected from him. If you've ever seen a John Carpenter film, you know it's very, like, synth heavy and kind of minimalist in that regard. I write music, and there's a piece that I have on my Bandcamp called Submartian that I had a friend describe it to me as, like, a John Carpenter vibe. Whittleby says, it wouldn't even need to be winter for the plot to happen. They just needs to be kept at the facility. Sure. But there is something, like Quinn pointed out, to be said for the thematic aspect of it growing darker as the plot goes on. Yeah, and it could even be a thing where, like, they're getting ready to leave and something gets them stranded there so that rescue can't come and they can't leave as winter sets in. Now, some other issues that I take with it is there's a lot of, like, there are a lot of snowstorms, and it's my understanding that Antarctica is a desert. It's not the not a desert in the way that people think of, where it's hot and sandy. It's a desert in that there's very little actual precipitation every year. So again, like I'm looking at the practical considerations, but also it's a John Carpenter film, and there are thematic elements to showing all of that, where it's like, okay, I know that this stuff wouldn't work, but for the story, for the yarn that John Carpenter is weaving, I think it works pretty well. And also, I think people kind of would expect you to see snowstorms in Antarctica, even though you really don't. So, there's a lot, like, there's a lot of things in film language that don't actually work in real life. Like, horses don't actually sound like coconuts, like a coconut halves being clopped around, but that is so ingrained in film language that it sounds weird if that's not the sound effects that we use. I think there was a joke in something where it was just like, oh yeah, no, we use cows for horses. Horses don't look like horses on screen. Wintleby says it works like a plot device. Yes, it's fine. These are very minor gripes. I really like Kurt Russell's character, RJ McCready. I get why he's an iconic character. The first time you see him is actually a very shocking to me moment. He's playing computer chess. This is 82, so computer chess is like a new thing. And he loses to the computer and gets mad and rips off one of the panels and throws his drink into it. So I think that's a very good character introduction for him, to show the kind of person that he is and how quickly he is willing to destroy things. Admiral Pocket says motion blur is added into video games because of it existing in movies. Yeah, well, I mean, everything in a video game has to be created in a computer, so the better that you can get it to look like film, the more realistic it is. So yeah, that makes sense. Actually, I was just watching a video the other day talking about the ways that racing games make it feel like you're going faster. You've got your from like camera shake to focal depth, like having like the field of view shift to give like a better speed to thing. Yeah, there's a lot of just film language things that might not necessarily map onto reality, but they're so ingrained that we expect them. There was this one scene in the movie, and it is a little later in the movie, but I don't think it's necessarily huge spoilers, so I'll just call it the blood test scene. And if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm referencing, and I don't need to get into the particulars of it. But the editing for that scene felt like they were missing coverage. The editing for that scene is very jarring. There are moments of tension that suddenly get immediately dropped, and like they just go back to doing the blood tests. And it felt like there was a part of me that was wondering whether this editing was a deliberately confusing choice, like they edited it that way deliberately to give you kind of an uneasy feeling, like, oh, well, did I miss something? What's going on here? Like, did I just imagine what just happened there? So part of me wants to say it might have been that, but also part of me knows that it's John Carpenter, who has long worked with shoestring budgets and kind of has had to make do with what he had. And I kind of feel like that sequence just felt like they were just missing shots and they couldn't afford reshoots. So I think that scene, I think that scene could have used a couple of continuity shots to better improve its flow. If John Carpenter's intention was to disorient me, then he did it in such a way that it made it look like it was accidental. You think the director's commentary is still free somewhere on YouTube? Well, I'll have to take a look at that at some point. But overall, I quite enjoyed the movie. I get why it's a cult classic. I also get why it was critically panned on initial release, just because of just the kind of the low budget vibes of it. It's actually not a low budget film. I think the budget for it was $15 million, which is more than most horror movies are shot for today, and that's in 1982 dollars. So I think I converted it, and it ends up being like $45-50 million in today's money. So that is a mid-range budget film. But it's John Carpenter, so it has the low budget feel to it. Anyway, I really liked this movie. I get why it's a classic. and I really liked how it ended. I thought it was I thought it ended a way that made the most sense for that kind of a situation. Hey, thanks for watching. I'm trying to get my channel monetized, so your view means a lot. Don't forget to toss me a like and subscribe and ring the bell. I stream every Monday and Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific, so catch me live and join in on the convo. You can find all my socials in the description below, and thank you to all my patrons with a very special shout out to my Whale Shark tier patron Ryan D and my Anemone Friend tier patron Piftle Cakes. Your support means the world. Catch you next time.